Javier Fernandez-Han. I'm a young inventor, and the world needs me to invent inventors. So to start, wait a minute. Okay. Well, anyway, I think the world needs me to invent inventors because I know that our world is faced by many different problems. Things such as drought, water shortage, deforestation, food shortage, and also poverty. These are some of the problems that our world is faced with. And I think that youth have great potential to solve this. Here's a graph that shows a study that was done about youth. It's about reaching the full potential of being able to think deep thoughts and be able to process information. So you can see here that around the age of about 14 and 15, youth can think very well. They can actually solve problems pretty effectively. Of course, they don't have much knowledge, and also they may not have very good judgments, but they're still very good at solving problems. And also, another big thing is that they don't have a lot of responsibilities. They have a lot of free time. So this is a graph that I created that shows, the red line shows how I perceive responsibility at different ages. And so you can see that when people are very young, they don't have a lot of responsibilities. But as they get older, they become exponentially greater because they have, they go to college, they get a job, and start a family. But when they're younger, they have lots of free time, and also they're quite good at being able to solve problems. Their mind is pretty capable at that, but they don't have the knowledge. And so I think that the youth are an untapped way of solving problems, an untapped group of problem solvers. And to me, I think it's very wasteful. It's like using a Ferrari to deliver pizza, or a Rolls Royce for that matter. It's a lot of potential that it could be doing good, but you're not using it in the best way possible. And so I think that youth have great potential to solve problems, and we all know that the world has many problems that need to be solved. So that's what I'm going to be talking about. I've created a way to help people to solve problems. And before I start that, I'd like to talk a bit about how people solve problems. So how do you usually solve problems? If you encounter some sort of problem, how do you usually solve it? That was something that I wanted to figure out earlier on so I can figure out how I can help others to solve problems. And to answer this, I'll give you a problem. A farmer has a greenhouse, and he would like you to invent a way to regulate the temperature and the humidity. And he wants a temperature and humidity, to regulate it within certain constraints, and he would like it to be very inexpensive, cheap, low maintenance, and also he does not have access to a power grid. He lives in a place that's very rural, so he has no electricity power grid he can use. And again, very simple, low maintenance, and inexpensive. So how would you solve this problem? I asked this same question to a number of my friends back at home in Houston, Texas, and I filmed them, and here's a short clip showing some of the responses I got.
First, I thought if I knew any other solution that I've ever seen or very similar.
The very first thing I thought of, to be completely honest, was a room humidifier. One of my best friends always has to have a very high humidity level.
It probably comes from personal experience living in Texas, and it's always humid.
Well, black is a good absorber of heat.
Didn't really occur to me until I had been working with the compost pile in my backyard.
So I asked a number of my friends and also some adults that I knew the same question about the greenhouse and asked them how they would solve it. I interviewed them, and I saw a number of trends. Here are some of them. One of them, I noticed that many of them, they drew on past experiences. You saw a number of people in the short clip. They said that they experienced something in the past or just something that they knew about that they had encountered in the past that they drew from. So they looked back in their past. What had they seen before? What's similar? Another one is that sometimes new ideas are generated just from ordinary occurrences. The last person said that he was inspired when he was just working with his compost bin. The act of using it helped him think about how the compost bin works, and that inspired him. So many of these new ideas are generated by things that are completely mundane chores or different things that happen normally, but because you're trying to solve a problem, you see how they're applicable to your needs. Number 3, I noticed that ideas tended to die quickly. Often the youth would think of many ideas, but they would quickly forget them if they cannot understand or cannot realize how they can be implemented right away. So often they have many great ideas that they were unable to take to the next step, and as a result, they died. Here are some more trends. A lot of times there's a lot of uncertainty. One person said when I first asked her the question, she had no idea, just kind of not sure where to start or what to do. And also during the process, often people are very unsure of what to do because it's not a process. And that brings me to the next point, which is often it's not deliberate. When people solve problems, they usually don't just sit down. It sounds kind of strange to say that you want to plan an innovation or plan an invention, because often these are things that you don't really know how you thought of the idea. It's something that kind of, many people, you ask them, how did you solve this problem, or how did you think of this? And they'll say, it just popped into my head. So there's not really a process, and so it's difficult and uncertain. The last trend that I'll talk about is I've noticed that a lot of times the solutions that people come up with, they're limited by their own knowledge and experience, because if they don't know about certain concepts or do not have certain experiences they could draw back from, they may not be able to have the same solution. It may take them more time to have this experience occur before they can have the same solution. So what if there is some sort of way to overcome all of these barriers? That is what I'm trying to do, and that is what I'm going to talk about today. It's called the Inventors Village. It is a fully immersive invention system. So it is a tool that people can use for any age group, and it helps them to have better ideas faster, and it is a tool for inventing. So to start out, I will talk about, I'll share with you how I solved this problem with the greenhouse using the Inventors Village. So first, here's the problem restated. First, I looked at which physics principles can help. This is something that's part of the Inventors Village. It has many different physics principles you can draw upon, and they're sorted in a way that's very easy to understand. Rather than sorting them by name, such as Pascal's principle, instead of searching it that way, they're organized in a way such as, I want to lift something, or want to move something. So it's very easy to say, I want something that has to do with humidity or with temperature, and then go back and find it. So first I looked at which physics principles can help me, and I found that hygroscopic materials. Hygroscopic materials are different materials that absorb moisture from the environment. And so I looked at these, found that they're probably applicable to my needs. And then I thought, when does this happen in nature? This is another part of the Inventors Village, different things from nature that can help you. So I looked at when can I find this hygroscopic property in nature. And I found that wasp nests, they exhibit the same property. I learned that wasp nests actually regulate their temperature by either absorbing moisture or evaporating the moisture that is in the nest, and that regulates the temperature, keeps that at a very constant temperature. And so then I thought, well, where can I find more of these hygroscopic materials that are very inexpensive? This is yet another part of the Inventors Village, existing technologies that are readily available. And I found that actually cardboard and paper can be used as these types of materials. So right away I had one beginning of a solution, which was to take this material, this cardboard and the paper, and to line the inside of a house with this, of the greenhouse. So it's like a wasp nest, where it can either have the moisture evaporate or have it condense on it to change the temperature. So then next, I thought, which inventions can help me? Which inventions that other people have already invented can I use that will help me with this? I came across the bimetallic strip. You may have heard this before. Essentially, you have two pieces of metal, and they're stuck together. So they have different rates of expanding when you heat them. And so when you have them both together and you apply heat, where the heat changes, one of them will be expanding more quickly than the other, and as a result, it bends. Oops. And so you can see here, here's some examples of the bimetallic strip, and if you see right there, there's one that's a spiral. This spiral will cause something to rotate because one is expanding more than the other. Same concept. And so I thought, maybe this could help me somehow. And then I thought, this will take care of the temperature side of this, but I also want to regulate the humidity. So I know the bimetallic strip will work for me because it can rotate like this, and I thought maybe a vent could rotate. But what about humidity? So I thought, why not apply the same concept of having one expanding faster than the other and apply it to the humidity hygroscopic strips? So my idea for this is to have two hygroscopic strips together, and they will expand at different rates depending on the different properties of the material. So it will also expand like this. And then I thought, why not put them in sequence so that if either the humidity or the temperature is exceeded or within a range that you don't want, it will move and actuate your vent. So here, this is a 3D drawing that I created of this. You can see the spiral. One of them is the hygroscopic strip. The other one is the bimetallic strip. They're in sequence. So one is right after the other. So if either of them are triggered by the environments, it will rotate. And inside of this, here's another view. You can see there's something that rotates. And it's kind of like this, where you have a hole going through, and then if it goes like this, it closes. So it's like a ball valve. And so this is a very simple concept for a vent that I created, triggered by humidity or by temperature. And also, here's it implemented in the house with the walls as well. And it was a very quick process. It's a new invention, and it creates, here's the different parts that I use of the Inventors Village: the nature's design, inventions, heuristics, and domain-specific knowledge. And here are the domain-specific principles. I'll go through them quickly. Hygroscopic materials, talked about that. Heat of condensation, when moisture is condensed or evaporated, it changes the temperature. Convection currents, this is for the air to go within or out of the vent when the vent is opened. And here are the heuristics. Heuristics, I talked briefly about these. The heuristics are part of the Inventors Village. You can think of them as different hints. They're kind of hints that help you with when you're solving a problem. I'll talk about those a bit more later on. Play with structure. Okay, here, this is an easier way to explain them. So we have a table that shows which heuristics that someone is using, or if you want to use them. So basically, these heuristics you see: playgrounds, play with space, play with motion, and then on the top, play tools. Things such as distort, or increase, decrease, reverse. So the ones in yellow, these are different attributes that you can modify if you have something, such as the valve or anything, or a ball or something, and you can distort it using these play tools. You can make it larger or invert it. And I'll give you an example now. First off, these are the ones that I used in my vent that I just showed you. I'll go through them quickly. So these are the ones circled, and I'll show you one of them now. So you see here, play with structure, and the one that I used here is in sequence, because I have one, or I think it's series, have one of, and then the other, the hygroscopic strip and then the bimetallic strip. So that's an example of one of the heuristics that I used when I created this. And also, you can see the other stars were the others that I used. And I did this quite quickly. It only took me about 1 hour to produce this, because it was very deliberate. It wasn't just thinking about it. In the video, I learned that many people just kind of had it in their mind, and they thought about it for a while. But this is deliberate. I actually sat down and went through my process using this Inventors Village, and it happened very quickly. So now I have a comparison, where I'll compare inventing with and without the Inventors Village, and I'll show it graphically. So first, on the top, you can see a number of different pictures. Each of these pictures represents one of the concepts or one of the ideas that I used to invent this. You see the beehive, the bimetallic strip. And now I'll have this timeline. This represents the entire time that it took to invent this. And do you see these different bars? These different progress bars show how much time was spent for each of these concepts to learn them. And in between them, you see gaps. This is how long it took in between each of these concepts. As you can see, there's a lot of space in between them. That's because when someone is trying to invent this, they don't have them all laid out in front of them. It may take them a few days before they encounter something, such as the compost bin, that inspires them. So it may take quite a while. Then these bars that are going down beneath each of these represent depth. And by depth, I mean how much progress was made towards actually solving your problem. So for some of these, if someone doesn't understand how this, such as the bimetallic strips, how it will directly help you with your problem, it will be lower than the others. And so if you don't have someone that's helping you with these, or you don't have a way to readily understand these concepts, it may take a while. And this is the total length. It took, so I'm guessing for this, it may take about 1 month. Now I'll show with the Inventors Village. You can see it's the same concepts that are being used. timeline is right here again. And this time, the progress bars are all next to each other. There are no gaps, because this is a deliberate process. And also, each one of these bars for depth are quite large because it's a process and a tool that's actively helping you through this, guiding you through this process. The overall time took me only 60 minutes, and that's a very small fraction of the 30 days that it may took without this Inventors Village. So the Inventors Village consists of many different parts, such as the domain-specific principles, the physics principles, things from nature, like the hornet's nest, the heuristics, and also another part called Invent and Innovate. This is a way to think about, it helps you think in very creatively, different creativity techniques, and this has been developed. I'll talk a little bit about this. Invent and Innovate is a program, it's a curriculum that students go through, and it helps them to think more creatively. And I have already implemented it in a few schools. So I'll talk about that a bit later, actually. The Inventors Village is under development, but Invent and Innovate has been produced over the summer, and I've taught it to a few schools locally in Houston. Shared this with 4 different high schools and also 1 K-12 private school. And the Invent and Innovate curriculum is one of many different components of the entire Inventors Village, but it is already being used. The other parts are still under development. Here is a last analogy to explain how the Inventors Village works. So to show how someone would think of a new idea or a new solution, think of it as this room, and it has a fire inside. A new idea is a very large fire. So when someone is thinking, usually, they have these sparks of innovation going out. You can see them here. Some of them will land in there and start catching the carpet on fire. But it doesn't make a very large fire because there isn't a lot of material, and also there are not a whole lot of sparks. The Inventors Village, specifically the Invent and Innovate curriculum, one part of it that helps you with creativity, there's part of it that helps you think of many ideas quickly. So it helps you with more of these sparks. But also, we include more of this fuel inside here. We include lots of different things that can help you, such as domain-specific principles or the heuristics, and this helps you make a very large fire. So currently, I have implemented the Invent and Innovate section in a few schools locally, but later on, in the future, I would like to implement this in more schools and also in developing countries. And that's because, while this can help anyone to solve problems, the greatest impact is in developing countries. If someone in a very poor community can learn this material, he or she can improve his quality of life for the whole community and for himself. And it's very empowering. So the greatest impact is in developing countries and in very poor communities. And an example of this is in the school by Ritika. Ritika is actually going to be speaking next, and she has a school which is in a very poor community, and we would actually talk about, she would like to use this material there. And in developing countries, that is the greatest impact. And so I think the world needs me to invent more inventors, and specifically, they can improve the whole quality of life for their communities. Thank you. Thank you.